Hey everybody! By the end of this tutorial, you'll be able to make this illustration of a fairy in a glass bottle. Let's go! Alright, let's start off by making the bottle. So we'll highlight the cube, actually press A to highlight everything, press X and confirm delete. Now Shift A to bring up the Add Geometry menu, and let's select a cylinder to start. Now there's a lot of edges here. In fact, there's 32 vertices around the top and bottom, and that's too many. Let's bring it down to maybe 12, just an even number. We'll subdivide it later, which will make it a lot smoother. Go into front view, and let's zoom in a little bit. And now we need to start shaping this in the form of a bottle. Now, if you were just to select the front vertices here and hope to scale them, notice in the back, the geometry is wonky, and that's because if you select box select by clicking and dragging across a region, in edit mode it only selects the front vertices. So what we have to do is press Alt Z, and that will let us go into X-ray mode, which means we can then select front to back. We can select through the mesh and select all the vertices that we want. So with those selected, let's press S to scale. And we'll just start to shape this a little bit. We'll give it like a taper. A little bit at the bottom. Top's pretty good there. Except what I want to do is make it kind of curved. Like that kind of thing. So, let's delete that very precisely. Okay. So let's actually click, drag, select the top vertices. And then press E, and that will extrude new vertices from the top there. And then if we scale that, press S to scale it, now we get this, it's an angular shape, but when we apply subdivision, the subdivision surface modifier to it, it'll actually smooth and curve this out. And we can do that pretty soon. And we can, of course, refine these edges and shape it. Maybe though, before we do that, let's create the top of the bottle. So press E again to extrude, somewhere about there. Maybe we'll scale in here with S. Press G to grab those, move around, but then press Z to lock it on the Z axis. I actually want to bring that back down quite a bit. But E to extrude there, and this will be like the neck of the bottle. Okay, so I don't like this shape right here. Let's move that. To select this whole ring, this edge loop rather, you can hold Alt and click an edge, and that'll select everything around it. So go back to front view, and now we can grab and just move that on the Z axis and scale it just so that we get the shape we want. The shape will change once we add subdiv, which we'll do right away. Again, hold Alt and click this edge up here. Let's keep working on the neck. If we press E and immediately press S to scale, we can start to form like a lip of the bottle. So about there. E again to extrude, and you can see that's automatically locked on the Z axis right there. And I think that's pretty good there. We can always adjust the shape later. Maybe about there. Okay, so now let's add the subdivision surface modifier by going over to this modifiers panel, click it, add modifier, and you can just type subdivision surface. And it looks pretty good here, that shape, but the top and the bottom needs some work. So let's do that right now. Let's actually press 3 to go into face select mode. And we have this top face selected. Let's just press X and delete the entire face. And let's do that same, actually not the same thing at the bottom. Let's press I, and that'll let us inset. We can inset about here. And then I again, just a little bit, and then press M to bring up the merge menu and merge at center. Okay, so now we can look at the shape of our bottle. I like how down here it curves a bit more. It curves up here. That's actually, I really like this profile. Here I might tighten this up. We can do that too. So to tighten these edges up, we need to add what are called support loops. And you do that with Control R. And that'll give us an edge loop here, and we can slide that around to about, let's see, I like the curve there, so let's put one there, but I still want to tighten this up here. So do another Control R, click, and then move that up. And you can see how it tightens that curve up there. So that's pretty good, but this is still, I still want this to be a little more angled. So tab back into edit mode, Control R here, click, and then slide down there. So now it's a bit sharper of an angle. Okay, so the bottle's looking pretty good, but what we need to do is add a solidify modifier. So click the add modifier button here, type in solidify, and we can give it some additional thickness here. I'm holding shift. Whenever you're adjusting values in Blender, you can hold shift to be more precise. See, it's going out of whack. Really easy there. Hold shift and that'll give it some thickness. In fact, if you look at the front and press Alt Z, you can see how thick the glass of the bottle is that way. That might be a little too thick. We'll see. We'll see. Yeah, maybe something like that. I think looks good for now. It's still pretty angled. So if we bump up the solidify, or sorry, the subdivision, let's actually move the solidify to the top. So it solidifies the mesh first, and then it subdivides it. We can bump this up to 2, and maybe the render to 3, or both to 3 is fine too. These numbers just mean you'll see the bottle in the viewport at a level of 3 subdivisions, and the render will be 3 as well. You can change those too, of course. If you want it to have more subdivisions during render, you can change this render value. But for now, let's leave it at 3. So that's actually a really nice looking bottle, in my opinion. If you right click, you'll get this shade smooth option, and that just smooths the shading. You can see the difference there. See how it's all faceted here? All these faces. Shade smooth will just smooth that and blend that out across the mesh for us. So there's a bit of an issue here. We want some more thickness around the rim. So maybe what we should do is before we add the subdivision, we can add a bevel modifier and bring that above subdivision so that it takes place first. And let's change the amount. Let's see, what value does it need? Let's actually change the segments first and then move the amount. And then we're gonna have to play with this angle a bit so that there you go. So that's pretty smooth. If you Alt Z again, you can see the thickness there. I think that looks pretty good. Let's try making the cork at this point. Select the object, press Tab to go back into edit mode. And let's actually option click this edge loop here. We'll press Shift D, and what that does is it will duplicate that geometry, that edge loop. And right click to cancel, and then just scale that in until you can see it there. Let's see, I might want it to actually go a little bit in. If we go into front view, press Option or Alt Z to go through X-ray. Now we can press G to move that around. And I want to just bring that down on the Z axis. And I don't want to go into like the body of the bottle, just down the neck a bit. And then we'll press F to fill that, because right now it was just an edge loop, but now F will put a face around that as well, or inside that loop. And then press E to extrude, and that will lock on the Z axis again. Let's go up there a bit, go to the front view so we can see the shape. If you press S to scale that, we can give it a bit of a taper, like an angle that way, so it's not straight. All right, but what we also want to do is separate this into a separate object, separate this cork. So if we press, let's see, I was in Alt Z to get into X-ray mode. We could press A twice just to deselect everything, and then hovering over this wireframe here, if I press L, it will select separated geometry. Notice how it doesn't select the bottle. I can also press L to select the bottle and have those both selected, but that's not what I want, so I'll just undo that. So now if you press P, you'll get this separate menu, and we'll separate the selection. And so now it's this orange highlight. So if you tab back into object mode, you have these two separate objects now. And that also kind of shows like this double outline. That's because it inherits or copies the same modifiers as the bottle that we had. So we don't need the solidify, but I think we will leave on the bevel, and we definitely want the subdivision so that it's still really smooth. So Alt-Z to see how that looks. That's actually pretty good. I might give this a bit more of a bit wider of a bevel there by changing the bevel amount. See how it rounds it out a lot more? That's actually kind of nice. Although, we need to fix this rim around here so that's a little, so that's up close to the cork. I like the roundness of the cork though at this point. So right click and shade smooth, and that blends it over that way. It's looking pretty good, but let's click the bottle, tab into edit mode. And if we alt click this edge ring, I wonder if we should press E, right click, and then scale that in. But that's not, I don't think that's going to be geometrically like the right way. So if we tab into edit mode and Alt Z, I think it's actually okay. Even though like this rim here isn't fully, if we press slash, we can go into isolation mode and Alt Z. You can see how like the rim isn't totally filled in here. Like from this to the top isn't filled in, but that's okay. The cork's there, and I think it'll be okay. So press slash again to get out of local view, and then tab to go back to object mode. I don't like how sharp this is actually, so let's play with that bevel amount, and let's see what we can get. Might take, maybe if we drop the segments down, drop the amount down. It's a little bit rounder that way, although there's no bevel at this point. So something's locking it out. I do kind of like that actually. So no bevel, just subdivide. Yeah, it's smoother that way. I think I like that more actually. It's rounder. Okay, so that's pretty good. Let's rename these. This is cork, so you can, in the outliner here, you can double click and type in cork. You can also click one or click something, the object here in the 3D viewport, and press F2. We'll name this bottle. The cork though should move as the bottle moves. So if I click the bottom, press G and move it around, the cork doesn't move with it. So we want the cork to move whenever the bottle moves. To do that, you can press the cork first, or click the cork first, click the bottle next, and notice how the cork is a darker orange. If we press Ctrl P, we get the Set Parent To menu, and we can parent it to the object and keep its transform. That means that it won't move, it'll stay where it is, but now it's a child of the bottle. And you can see how it disappeared in the outliner, but if you click this arrow to expand, you'll see that the cork is now a child. It's nested in the hierarchy of this collection here. So now if you press G with this bottle, you can move it around. And I'm just going to press X and move that across here. It doesn't really matter where you move it to, because we can easily snap it back to the center in a minute here. We'll do the fairy next. So the fairy is going to have this glow effect around it, and to do that we'll need two spheres. One sphere will be the brighter point, like this bright, kind of almost white, and then outside will have kind of a glow to it. And we'll also make wings out of planes. So quickly, as simply as we can model those, let's throw in, yeah, UV sphere is fine. And we can leave it at default. If you want to bring the geometry down, you can cut those in half. So 16 segments and 8 rings. Because when you put a subdivision modifier on like we did, it'll smooth these out. There's a quick way to do it in the viewport. You can press Command or Control, on Windows 1, 2, or 3, and that will give it different subdivisions. But this is actually what I was worried about. You still get this point, even with 3 subdivisions. You can see how it's kind of pointy there. I think it's okay. Yeah, you get this pinching too. And that's because of the geometry here with these triangles. But for the glow, for the fairy glow, I think it's okay. With that, let's rename this using F2 to fairy. And then pressing Shift D and right click to cancel, we'll scale using S. We'll scale that up. This will be the glow around the fairy. And whenever we scale something, we need to make sure that we apply the scale. Otherwise, modifiers and other calculations won't work properly. So press Ctrl A and apply the scale, and everything comes back down to 1, 1, 1. Okay, so we'll just have to keep in mind that there are 2 objects there. If you go into X-ray mode with Alt-Z, you can see that there's the fairy, and this will be like the glow effect around it. So let's make this glow follow the fairy whenever we move it around. So first select the glow, then select the fairy. The fairy is a brighter orange, which means it's the active object. So now press Ctrl P, keep transform, and now we have the fairy. Whenever it moves, the glow moves with it. Let's add just a couple wings. Let's add a plane. We can align it to the view, in my case, because we're in the front view, so it's flat. And let's just move this up and press 1 to go into vertex mode. And let's grab this vertex, move it on the x-axis. Whenever you're grabbing something, you can middle click and it'll select an axis to lock onto. In this case, because I've already moved it along the x-axis, if I middle click, it will lock on that way. So it's a fast way to do it. Bring this over pretty close there. Grab this vertex, move it down a little bit, and I think Control-Shift-B will allow us to bevel that single vertex. But scroll the mouse wheel up to give it some roundness, about like that. Maybe reshape this just a little bit more. Maybe this one too will give it a bit of roundness that way. What I did there was press GG, and that lets you slide a vertex along its edge. So about like that. Now if we tab into object mode and press Control 1 or 2, that looks pretty good. That'll put a subdivision around it and smooth all those edges around. Smooth them out. So now what we can do is the origin of this wing is right at the world center. So if we pull a mirror modifier on here, on the x-axis, it will mirror itself across that origin, and we get 2 of those. So now if we go into tab, press A, and let's rotate that actually. Rotate with R, and then G to grab. We can move these more into position. Okay, so now this fairy is a little bit too big, so let's bring it down. In fact, let's bring it down kind of relative to what it's going to be in the bottle, about there. And then these wings, if we tab into edit mode, we can reshape these a little bit to R, using R to rotate, G to grab, and S to scale. That's pretty good, I think. Might be a bit too wide, but we can scale everything all at once to fit inside the bottle when we get to that stage. Okay, so now let's actually parent these wings to the fairy as well. If we select the fairy first, and then shift select in the outliner, that keeps the first selection, in this case the fairy, the active selection. So this is the order we want. Press Control P, parent keep transform. So now when we move the fairy, the wings move too. And in fact, not just move, but if you rotate, all the children inherit that transformation. Or if you scale, everything scales as well. So now we can kind of, let's see, we can just grab this and move it over with S and like rotate it to kind of get like a sneak peek. So that's kind of what it will look like in the bottle. I might squish this bottle down a bit. But with the fairy, if you Alt-R, Alt-G, that will remove any kind of change that you did to its location or scale. The other one being Alt S, or Alt S is for the scale. Location, rotation is Alt R. Okay, so now let's put on some materials on here. Let's go into shading. Let's close this. I'm just going to right click, join that area. Go into front view here, and with the, let's start with the fairy because it's kind of the coolest. The fairy itself is going to have just a super basic material. So if we click new here, give this a name like fairy, and it will have this glow. So let's give it like a pink. Let's change the render though to cycles. Right, we want to see rendered. So let's go into render. I'm pressing Z to pull up this pie menu. So hold Z, go into rendered, and now we start to get the actual cycles render here. So then what we'll want to do is give this some strength. And to see the glow itself, we have to actually hide this glow. So press the eye icon. There you go. So there's the emission from the fairy. It's going to be pretty white, but we'll add the glow around it. For these wings, click the wings, press new, give it a name if you want, and we'll give that a color like a kind of a blue, something like that. And you can also give it a bit of transmission so that light would pass through these, thin, delicate wings. Okay, before we do the glow, let's do the bottle. Click the bottle, click new, and give this a, if we do transmission here, and you crank the weight up, it's like fully transparent essentially, except the roughness changes how foggy it is. We don't have any other lights in our scene, that's why it's so dark. So if you go up to here, this triangle here, and deselect scene lights and scene world, that will give us this HDRI lighting. We can change that to something else. And if we turn the world opacity down, now we're just left with our objects. So this is glass. It's kind of rough, but if you change the roughness down here, now you can see how smooth that glass is. All of these lights is because of studio lighting in this HDRI. So maybe let's change it to something. You can just play around and figure out which one you like the best. That's kind of cool. It's got trees. Thinking of like a hero in a forest kind of thing. Let's leave it like that for now. Super basic, and we can modify it as needed. Click the cork, press new, give it a name, and this will give it like a dark orange, or rather a dark brown. Maybe not too dark. That's pretty good. And I'm gonna make that rougher though. Rougher, more rough. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. So now, for the next part, let's click this fairy. Let's go to glow and bring that glow back. So it covers up the fairy. Alright, so for that glow, to make it glow, we're actually going to treat this sphere as almost like fog. So to do that, press new. We'll call this glow. And if we actually want to take this out, so click this node here, press X, press Shift A to bring up the menu of different nodes and type in volume. We want the volume scatter. So this is like kind of like fog. Make sure it's not connected to the surface. It needs to be volume output to the volume input. So there you can see already that it's actually has this glow effect, which is super close to what we want. I wonder if we change the color here. Yeah, that's pretty good. Awesome. But I want to be able to control this gradient, how opaque to transparent it is. So to do that, we can press Shift A and type gradient texture. And if we connect this color, and notice it's kind of wearing out here, and it's more opaque here, we need to change this to a quadratic sphere. But we also need to give it texture coordinates. So Shift A and type in texture coordinate. And I think we need the object. Okay, so now it's like too dark. You can't really even see it at all. But if we pull in a color ramp, Shift A, type in color ramp, we can play with these values. And as I adjust these, I'm expecting the gradient to come into view a little bit better. Maybe we have to adjust this density. We are close with this node setup, but what we need to do is take this color output and put it in the density instead. The density will just control how dense the fog, right, the glow is around the sphere, from the core, from the center of the sphere to the edges. And also, we need to change the color ramp to B-spline. And right now, I'm not sure what we're actually viewing. I'm just Control-Shift clicking these nodes, which is a node wrangler function. And to do that, you'll have to go into your preferences, your add-ons, and then add node wrangler. Check node wrangler, and that way you can have additional node wrangler functionality. But right now, maybe let's move. Actually, let's just reset this. Click this triangle, reset color ramp, change this to B-spline. And now this color should control the density. We want, maybe it's because this is plugged into surface. There we go. Okay, so that was causing the issue there. So maybe let's select that glow sphere, press S to scale it up. Give it a lot there. Remember, press Control A and apply the scale. For now, this is pretty good. Let's scale it down. Maybe we can just adjust how much glow we have based on the scale of the sphere. You can click the fairy itself, and I want to scale just the center, the white part. So if you go to Options and click Parents, that will let me scale only the middle instead of, without that option, if I scale the middle, everything else, all the children, the wings, and this glow will scale as well. So I'm going to do that one more time. And once it's the size that I like, I mean, alternatively, you could change everything else around it so that it's smaller relative. But I think that's pretty good for now. So if we take the fairy from the outliner, grab, oh, we still have the only parents, effect only parents. Let's turn that off. Grab that. Now the fairy moves around. And let's move the bottle back into position. We can click the bottle, press Shift S, and then selection to cursor. And that will move it right back to where it originally started. Do I like the shape of the bottle? I might want to compress it a bit. Let's go into edit mode, and actually let's go back to layout. So if we go into edit mode, press Option Z to make sure we're in X-ray. I might bring these down. I might bring them down quite a bit. See how it's encompassing the fairy a bit closer there? That's pretty good. And then bring this cork back down as well. All right, there you go. So that is our fairy in a bottle. So now we can start adding some lighting and setting up our scene for render. Let's move this cork just a bit up. Sweet. All right, let's move this over across here. And let's start to add some lights. If we press Shift A and go into light, let's add an area light. And right now you can see the white, it's this white square, it's right inside our bottle. So let's press Z to move it up. And coming over to the object data properties here, this light icon, if you click it and drag this power up, you'll give it some extra strength. So maybe let's just click and set it to 100. And we can affect the size of it as well. That's kind of looking better. A little bit better. But I don't like how it's straight above. So if we go to the side, to the right, grab this on the Y, we'll lock it to the Y axis by middle clicking, and then press R. We can rotate this and just get it in position so it's not like right on top, and go back to front. So it's kind of like this back rim light. Playing around with the lights can be really just trial and error. I almost wonder if we should have the light in front so that it lights up the cork and has like a highlight on the rim. So we can try that too. If we just rotate this a little bit, grab this and move it in front, and then go to the front view. That's kind of cool. I don't like how it's perfectly centered. So maybe let's move it this way, rotate it around here. It's pretty good. It's hard to see this pink. So let's actually go back to the shading tab. And I wonder if we can give that more power. For one, I'm going to scale that up. I'm going to scale that up and then click the fairy. And the fairy had this glow strength. So if we crank this up, maybe let's set it to 100. It should be brighter because that light is emitting through the volume. So that might look a bit better. Yeah, I think I like that better. Let's move the fairy or rotate the fairy. So it's just like a little, and then not perfectly in the middle of the bottle either. Just kind of off center. Pretty good, pretty good. And I need another light. Let's go Shift D this light to duplicate it and rotate it around to the side. And if we go to the top view, we can actually see what those lights are looking like. So we can move that a little bit into place there, so it's more right on the side. And we can change the power of this to something less, like 50. And you can change the color too. And so that way we can get like a blue or a purple to kind of complement the pink from the fairy. So that's kind of cool. What we can do is try changing this light to, instead of a square, we can make it a point light up here. So click point. And then we might have to actually bump the power quite a bit because now it's just a point. I was hoping to see it more on the bottle, but I think that speck right there might be it. Let's up the radius here. There you go. But it's too much in the center. I want it to be more on the side. So go to the top view. And we can see the point light right here. Let's just move this on the Y to bring it more on the side of the bottle. Going back to the front. Yeah, so now it's more to the side. Let's bring this up on the Y a little bit more. I kind of like that. Although I don't like the purple now, not as much. So let's give it a bit more, desaturate it a little bit more there. I wonder too if this area light, there's all these highlights, there's a lot of noise going on the glass, so if we turn the area off, I kind of like it just like that. It's simpler. I might try moving this up a bit on the Z. Highlight there, highlight here. I'm actually going to move it on the X axis over to this side. Or that side, which means... Right, and the purple's too strong. So let's desaturate that even more. We've got a lot of like highlights on the bottle from the fairy itself. We can tell because if we hide this, all those highlights go away. So there's not a whole lot we can do about those. And I think that's okay. Scale it up a bit there. Move it just a little bit over. I think that looks pretty good, honestly. We did have an area light there. And now it's conflicting with this other one. So let's move that area light to this side. Rotate it. And let's grab that on the Z axis and move it way up. I want more light on this cork. but not on the bottle. And let's get rid of this rendered region with Alt Control B. What we can do though is highlight this cork with the area, and we could exclude this bottle from the light. So if we click the bottle, shift click the light, and press Control L, now we can use light linking, a relatively new Blender feature. So we can exclude the bottle from the light. So now we can light up this cork the way we want, but we don't get all those additional highlights on the bottle, which is perfect. Honestly, there's too many highlights in my opinion, but I can't control that from the this emission, the fairy emission, but that's fine. I like this highlight here. I wonder if we changed the radius. I just made that even smaller. Kind of moved it around to play with it. Yeah, that's pretty good. All right. I think that's looking pretty good. I think what the last thing we can do is, let's see, we're in object mode. We have nothing selected. We press Shift A and add a mesh plane. This is flat, so let's rotate it with R. Press 90, and X. And that'll put it on the facing the front. And then S to scale that up. Let's like scale it way up. And then tab back into object mode, grab with G and press Y. We can move that back a bit. That'll be like our backdrop. We might want to move it way back though, so we're not getting these area lights or these lights so much. So let's do that. How far back do we have to move it? It's pretty good, but I want like a yellow, I think, for the back. So if we go into shading, go to rendered, and add a new material, we'll call it backdrop. Click the base color, give it yellow. Let's make it actually pretty dark yellow. All the way to yellow here, like full saturation. Let's turn green. Pretty yellow there, okay. Go to front, and let's bring that down a little bit, not too much. We can always tweak it later too. Okay, so let's go back to layout. And what we'll do is, with the plane selected, press Shift S, and then cursor to selected. That snaps the 3D cursor right to the origin of the object that we had selected. And now if we add a light, we'll make it a point light. That's right in the middle of the plane. So if we press G to grab, move it in front, and then G, Z to move it down. Okay, we'll move it off camera essentially. But then if we create a much bigger radius and a much stronger power, you can always just crank it just to see how strong it's going to be. Now I think it's definitely lighting up the bottle. So let's do the same trick that we did where we click the bottle, shift click the light, Control L, and exclude that. Now we don't have the backlight lighting up the bottle. That's kind of cool actually. So now let's add a camera. Shift A. Oh, actually our cursor's way over there, way over here. So let's Shift S, cursor to the world origin. That goes back to 0, 0. And now if we Shift A to add a camera, we can position it anywhere we want, really. Like in the viewport, just tumble around to where you like the view. Actually, I noticed that you're not seeing this glow that much, so we might adjust that. But if you go to View, Align Active Camera to View, that'll put the camera's view right around the bottle. We'll adjust this too, but this plane, let's scale it way up so it's within the camera still. Okay, actually I might just go to the front. Just go to the front, go Align View, Active Camera to View. I think this is too bright, Let's cut that in half. And half again. Just trial and error. Yeah, that's a bit better. I like this dark outline around it, and you can see the glow a bit better. Okay, so now we've got the fairy. The fairy moves the wings. Let's go to solid and go into wireframe. So the fairy moves the wings around, and the bottle moves the cork. But let's select the fairy and then shift select bottle. Now the bottle's active, it's brighter orange. Control P, object keep transform. And now when we move the bottle, or the fairy moves with the bottle, including rotating. So if we go back to rendered, we can move the bottle around, but those highlights change too. That could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. Let's just give it a bit of an offset. Yeah, just like that. Okay, last thing is, can we get this glow to be a bit brighter? And if we click that fairy, so there's the bottle in front of the fairy, the glow in front of the fairy, and then the fairy itself. In that case, it's kind of hard to click what you want. Here I am clicking, 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 but you can actually alt click, and then you get this menu of all the objects that are layered on top, and that lets you pick the one that you want. Okay, this is already cranked to 100. How high can you go? 200? 200. How high can you go? 10,000? You save just in case something bad happens. Okay, so you can go like super high. We don't want that strong, but we can definitely play with that strength. Because it's so strong, I'm actually going to bring that down a bit. That's pretty good. It looks a little too big in the bottle. So let's shrink that with, or scale that down with S. Okay, let's go back to the layout. All right, I'm gonna call it here. I'm pretty happy with the shape of this bottle, the glow around the fairy. I love the shape of the wings, the cork. Let's see how it looks when we render. Well, thanks for following along. Let me know in the comments how your illustration turned out. And if you enjoyed this tutorial, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.